aren't we getting it on the?
I would look on your online stream because it might look different than what it looks like in yours.
But we're still like getting it.
Is it printed on? Even if you just don't get email specific. Yeah, and then it'll just show. What you could do is, yeah, large. There you go. And then you small. Can you pull it on your phone? Maybe it's not reading when you do that. Okay, fine. Hey, how are you? Yes, okay.
Your invitation is freaking me out though.
Why?
It says 11 o'clock in the actual subject.
Okay.
It populated for 10. So is it really 10 o'clock?
It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but in the actual subject line of the meeting, it says 11 to 12.
Oh my gosh.
Just FYI. Hopefully people don't read those things. They just accept meetings blindly like I do and show up.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was on the, so which info was that?
The one that you forwarded for today's meeting. Well, it populated at 10 o'clock. I can't really show you it because I had a day log on my sales team that was supporting that. But it says 11 to 12 in the actual title. But it only populated for 10 to 11.
Oh, okay. So on the calendar, it is 10 to 11, but on the subject, but
11 to 12.
it's usually at 10, so I think.
Most people, I blindly just accept things and show up when my calendar tells me to be places without reading
Okay, well,
information.
What?
So just FYI, if you happen to miss people you're expecting to show up if they're reading the title and
Yeah, no.
the time.
And I was going to ask you, did I have any follow-up items to give you from our meeting?
You're going to have whoever owns that database of the test results.
Okay.
Send us the actual raw data so our actual engineers could scrub it for you. And
Okay.
Give you just their feedback in terms of what they.
I was trying to remember, actually, I was going to call you, because I thought that we had some things pending. Okay.
Well, there's 10 a.m. here.
On the
agenda.
It's just, I think, in the subject line. Is it in the subject line?
It's in the subject line that says 11, yeah. But the calendar has the correct time.
Okay.
So some people read things, I don't.
Hey, how's it going? You guys came up here.
We did.
Wow, this is a rare occasion.
We had other things to do too, so.
How are you doing? Well, I'm glad you guys like it full.
Yeah, we
now we're panicking around it. So, so.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
It's every other month. But this time, this is actually off schedule. We had one last month, but we wanted to start getting feedback on the broadband plan. It wasn't quite ready for the last meeting. So we don't want to wait 2 months to do like some draft out. But I think we're still planning on having August. We have been streaming most of the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, just please set up the table.
Remember to sign in. We have your information.
On this right here?
That's fine, or there's another one over there, it doesn't matter. They're both the same.
We met many years ago. We all presented here. Michael Lane, engineer from Sprint. We were for that public safety interoperability meeting. Yeah, yeah. I saw your name on the invite. I'm like, I always gotta drive up from there. Wow. On a regular basis, but good to see you. You too. You too. We haven't done much since that last meeting, but I think so much is in flux with FirstNet and what's really going on and what's happening that it just. Okay. I'm really not. Michael, okay, cool. Great.
I mean, I think it's okay. Just
I reached out to Kevin, and he's like, I really get more direction.
well, is it showing this online? You know what I mean?
I don't know, that, supposedly that one right there.
How you doing? How are you, sir?
Well, it might show both. It might be showing both windows. So.
How are you?
How are you doing?
So good, thanks. How are you?
Thanks for coming.
This is a,
Oh.
Let me get it.
Yeah, I would love, actually, that would be great. Let's take a few minutes to do that. You need to do this.
Do you want me to write it down?
Good. Good. Busy. Just got done. I took my son on a scout camp last week. I was on all week, so that was.
I'm sorry, I just barely updated it all. I was like, oh my gosh.
Actually, he's 11. But they.
Like, I know where you are.
Co-spring or 11-year-olds.
Where's that?
They're still friendly.
You're still friends. Well, I'm glad that you got it. But now
They
I
have a
think
little
you're
different agenda for
officially
the
over
11
on
to
the
13.
newsletter and the advisory.
More like a regular scout
I
camp.
think it's working on my phone.
Adventure for the
Love it.
Guam. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's looking exactly like that.
They can get a little grueling. Especially if they have. Well, he's
What do you do? Like,
I'm basically going and rolling in my there, but every
weird.
Because they don't want to be. That's so weird.
They cut out the whole meeting.
Yep, pretty much.
That's
You want to
hilarious.
keep yourself, you want, or not? Yeah, you can. I think it's good for people to kind of see what's going on in the room.
Are you flying solo today?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, I
didn't split things up, so I ended up with the Salt Lake short stage. Which isn't a terrible one. Hey, how are you, Kelly? Good.
I guess I would be happier, but those people are very
Yeah.
Not terrible.
sell tickets.
And they're very
David, how you been, man?
pretty good. How about you? Goofing off or just working on
A little bit of goofing off. Past few weeks, so
now biking or dirt bike?
just been, let's see, so we had a family vacation that was about an 8-dayer, so that was a good goof off. To the Dominican Republic.
Oh, you are.
Just an all-inclusive. Hung around for a while.
Do you want to look at this?
That
That was
So that you
June.
can-
you were on a compound. Did you leave the compound?
we ventured out, and that's where it gets scary.
The one, that big thing they had up in Provo.
Nothing super eventful besides
Josh
took the
came
kids
with
and just,
Yeah.
so that was good.
just with everybody.
See, this last weekend we went to Moab and ran the river, and then
Yeah,
went
so like I
to
would
Hell.
be in the way. Maybe I might have you like hand stuff out as we go.
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
hey, how's it going? You all ready?
That's really cool.
I give you 10 minutes.
He just
Are you
never
okay?
does anything but focus on work, has a slave away. Never does anything with his family.
I slave away when it's
Never goes
important.
biking. Never squeezes off
We've
around.
captured your corner. You're usually over here.
I am. I'll just sit over here, Dave. Something different.
It was Jeff that started it. Yeah, that's okay. Cascaded.
Jeff's fault.
We come 30 minutes early just
Good,
to
how are
do
you?
this spot.
Doug and I sit over there too.
Karen and I sit over here. Jared always sits somewhere in between.
I haven't been to this meeting for a couple of months. It just hasn't worked out. So, I don't know. I guess they haven't had it for.
Yeah.
They had it in June, and then prior to that, it was at URTA. And so, yeah, it seems like it's been a while, but I've probably only missed one.
I don't know, I just had to be. Oh, I have to go a couple hours.
But it didn't happen. Yeah, you're right.
Glenn, come here for a sec. I have to show you this. You're gonna love that you made it into the broadband.
I did, huh? Oh, my goodness.
There you are.
All right, all right.
I didn't ask your permission.
That's fine, that's fine.
That's a good picture.
We're doing,
Hi, Abby, we've met before.
how are you?
Tons of paperwork. More than you can now.
Unserved or underserved?
I know, I saw that on my schedule. I was like, oh yeah, that's coming up in like 4 weeks. Well, this is it. Or less.
So is it based on the state though, or is it based on commission?
You were like representative. That's great. I gotta come over here and hang out. Well,
At least we won't have to worry about audio.
it's actually, we're gonna be showing you that.
Right.
They really want The things we're doing.
I think we're gonna have a full house.
But she doesn't have anything to do with her dad. Hey, I'm doing well. How are you? Things going okay? I guess they invited me to bring four people. Like, one of bringing his
So glad
granddaughter.
you're here.
I've never seen the car. They're like, you do a wedding, sightsee. She has to pay for everybody.
Yeah, let's get in touch on this. Well,
Yes, all right, no longer. It has been unblind. I'll go sign in later after the sign-in sheets have become less popular. But this is the blue shirt side. Hey, you should be over here. You also have a
Wraps around.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blue shirts in a row, sort of.
Well, it is July.
Right, right, right.
Having a tie in July.
I know, I should do it. Ah. I'm Jim.
Emery.
Carbon Emery, brand.
Cool. You install fiber on all new installs?
We do. We do, and we're actually in the process of cutting over all existing subscribers.
Really? When will you be all fiber?
It'll be a while. It'll be 5 years, but we started the project this year, and you're about 300 customers in, so we've got about. What's that? Soon to retire. Oh yeah. Okay.
You have an interesting price for a gigabit?
You retire, you figure out what you want to be when you grow up finally, huh?
Well, we have 700.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's kind of fine on the fiber project, but the metering is.
I don't blame you. There's always other things to do.
2011.
Cool. So what speed do you talk about? It's a
100 by 100.
Oh, 100
100 up,
megs.
100 down.
Oh, 100. Okay. When you said buy, I started to think about binder.
That way we, most residential users fit into that category without any problem. And so.
How you been, Douglas?
We know where that experience is at based on network rules. And
It's been a busy.
buy instead of by speed based on.
So our thing is applications that can take advantage of that. We figured that not going to be of value to folks unless they can find good ways to take advantage of it.
Yep, I agree.
So, we just had our big annual meeting in Silicon Valley 3 weeks ago. And, we showed off 40 applications that needed advanced networking or something.
Sure.
How you doing?
Good.
Roger and I owe you
Anything from the Oh, he got back. He said you're gonna go
Quite a few things. Extensive collaborative simulations where people are in a virtual world or
No,
another.
they figure the statute
How to collaborate.
says total Utah
One
revenue.
person moves, the other person
And
needs
we're
to
like,
see it move in the same time. Sort of like gaming, except that
I didn't actually see it.
I'm only just public benefit because I'm a nonprofit. So,
I mean, there's some other ways.
so I like the gigabit, even, I think your buckets are just fine, because the bits get there first. I like the gigabit because the bits get there first. Then the 100, but 100 is still 10 times as fast as 10, so.
Right now, this is the way the statute is.
And by the end of
For the USF, out of the USF, they don't do that. So
Yep.
that was 1,000.
Okay, we're gonna get seated and start with the meeting.
Yep. Right, that's not because they're gonna use the bandwidth, it's because I want the low.
Okay, so I think let's really quickly, we're gonna start with the introductions, and let's start with the people on the phone first, because then we won't forget. So we have people on the phone. So if there's anybody on the phone, could you let us know that's listening?
Hi, this is Steve with All West, Steve Taylor.
Oh, really quiet.
Hi, Bruce Todd with Strata Networks.
Hear you.
Jacob
Hi,
Barlow
Elisa
with
Fox.
CenturyLink.
Elisa Fotz with Centricom.
Hello? So somebody that's on the phone.
Hi, this is Gary Zabriskie and Levi Roberts with 5 County.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so Gary and Levi are on the phone. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody other than Gary and Levi on the phone?
Yes,
Yes.
Jacob Barlow, CenturyLink.
Okay. Jacob Barlow, CenturyLink.
Steve Taylor, All West.
Okay.
Elisa Fotz with Centricom.
What was the name?
Elisa Fotz with Centricom.
Kelly, did you give me Bruce Todd, Strata Networks?
No, I didn't. Thanks. We'll put you on the list. Is there anybody else on the phone? Actually, you should be able to. Okay, great. So let's go around the room and do introductions. I'm Kelly Cole. I manage the Utah Broadband Project in the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and we'll just go around the table and then we'll go to the outside.
I'm Heather Webster, and I work on Kelly's team.
Justin Jones with the Salt Lake Chamber.
I'm Brian Carver with the Bear River Association of Governments.
I'm Ryan Phelps. I'm with Manti Telecommunications in Manti City.
Gavin Cox, Manti Telecommunications.
Alex Martinez, Verizon Wireless.
Jim Farr, CenturyLink.
Tui, AT&T.
David Green, U.S. Forest Service.
Glenn Reichert, US Ignite.
Jared Anderson, Emory Telecom.
Douglas Meredith and John Scarlakis, sitting in for URTA here at 1B2.
Dave Ryan with Strata Networks.
Jeff Goodrich, Strata Networks.
Michael Lane, Sprint.
Steve Frost, Visit Wireless.
Doug Stillman, Visit Wireless.
Shari Chambers from Vale. Amy Tucker with Utah Broadband Project.
John Harvey, the Public Service Commission.
Michael Merrill, Public Service.
Aaron Mann with Google.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. We have a really good group. We have a good, diverse group of rural providers, wireless providers, state entities, so that's great. So as you saw on our email, so this is kind of a special Utah Broadband Advisory Council meeting. Most about what we'll be doing is talking about the Utah Broadband Plan, but first we have a few quick announcements. We put some handouts on the table that we can pass around in a minute. But some of the bigger announcements, the FCC just announced some of its E-rate program, And one of the big things that's come out is that they are planning on funding wireless networks in the schools, which is a big change. And I don't know if UEN has anything that they wanted to comment on the new E-rate modernization order or not, but we've put a few materials on the table to look at. And then the other big, Sabrina?
I'll throw something out
Sure.
there since it's kind of my probably all know they voted on the E-rate modernization order last Friday. We've yet to actually see an order. Some of the things we expect to see in the order are more funding for Wi-Fi components and maybe changing the nature of the program a little bit to potentially pay for managed Wi-Fi services. So that the schools can already got to part of one of the major changes that results in that capability is changing the priority system. Right now there's a priority 1, priority 2 funding category. So they're changing the category, calling it category 2, to allow for funding of managed services, for example, rather than just purchasing equipment. There's no mention of raising the cap. About 2.4 billion now so far. That's one of the issues that's kind of drummed up the notion that lingering known quantity, which is demand far exceeds the program's past consistently for years, but it's also consistently been a lot of rollover from it. So we're hoping to see the order quickly, next week or so. I think they're really enacted, shall we say. There are some of the handouts on the table here that they were providing. You notice one of the things that the chairman has created a task force, which is procurement, contracting, billing. So that's a little bit disturbing for us because experience has already shown how essentially scrutinized service programs. So we hope it doesn't increase the burden for us. Anyway, might be something.
That strike force is from the Enforcement Bureau. And so you never want to talk to the Enforcement Bureau. And so having a strike force in the Enforcement Bureau is troublesome. I just wanted to note that the Wi-Fi they're talking about comes on the heels of what was announced in January. The FCC authorized new licensing or new authorization for 802.11ac Wave 2 standard Wi-Fi, which allows for outdoor use and up to 1 watt of power, which is a quantum leap above what indoor Wi-Fi is. So this is not your father's Wi-Fi that's coming on down the road.
Great. And then, Doug, since you're already talking a little bit, we also had a handout that the FCC is launching its rural broadband experiments, and Douglas actually brought in some information in addition to what we had handed out. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. You have a public notice. FCC launches rural broadband expansion experiments, and the public notice was released July 11th, and then last night, the FCC released its order. A fairly accessible order. It's only 100 pages, and about 50, 60 pages of that is all boilerplate appendix stuff. So it's about a 40-page document. The FCC initially anticipated having rural broadband experiments in price cap and rate of return areas around the country. That has been revised. It's only for price cap areas, and it's only for census blocks that are identified by the Connect America model. And the page here that you have that has the FIPS state code Utah on the title, these are just a quick count of all of the census blocks. So the first column is the county. The second column is the count of census blocks in that county
that will be eligible for consideration. And then the sum of locations column are the housing counts within those census blocks. So as you can see, in Utah, there's 8,296 potential census block or locations within 1,700 census blocks. The census blocks throughout the nation for this amount to about 750,000 census blocks are on the list. And so we have a very small number of census blocks where you do not have competition in these areas. The requirement is to actually fill out paperwork for these areas. If you want to serve a census block, you not only have to serve the unserved customers, but you also have to commit to serving all of the customers. $100 million are reserved for this particular experiment. 75 million are for providers who commit to providing 25.5, so 25 megabits down, 5 megabits up in speed, and then other performance obligations apply.
Yes. You mentioned that this applies to schools. I believe it also applies to libraries. Yes. Yes, thank you. Well, great. So for the rest of the agenda, we want to talk about the Utah Broadband Plan, but we're also going to have about 10 minutes at the end of the meeting. Last time when we met, we had all of the regional planning teams report in about their regional plans. And Brian Carver with the Bear River Association of Governments has been serving as a coordinator of all of the AOG coordinators. And so as a final milestone in that process, he is putting together a summary of the recommendations of the AOGs. And so he's going to talk about that a little bit later. And, those recommendations, we had all of the recommendations from the AOGs as we were putting together the broadband plan. And so we've kind of been able to do both in tandem. So his document, I think, represents the AOGs and what they've said in their direct recommendations. And then our plan, I think, represents not only their recommendations, but also, feedback that we've gotten from stakeholders over the past several years and in these meetings. So with that, so we put together a draft of the broadband plan, and we really would appreciate your feedback on the plan. So what we're planning on doing is we'll go through it today, and then this afternoon we'll send out electronic versions. We'll send out probably a PDF of this designed version, but then we'll also send out a Word copy of the document, just because that'll probably be easier for people to submit any comments or edits. And then we're asking that you get any comments and edits back by July 31st. And then we'll put together a final draft based on the feedback that we get. And then if you would like to be listed, if you remember when we did the advisory council report a few years ago, we had a page that listed all of the contributors to the plan, and we welcome all of you to participate as contributors. So if you would like to read the document, you can just read it, review it, and say, that's great, put me as a contributor. You can provide edits if you'd like, and then we'll list you as a contributor. And then also, if you like what you've seen in the broadband plan and you'd like to write a letter of support, we'd love to get those from you as well. And any specific information in the plan that you think is particularly important, I think would be great to include, so that we kind of have those on file, so we know, what our stakeholders feel about the plan. So, Amy, can you pass out copies to anybody that doesn't have the plan? So I'm just going to show you. I've given you the pages that have text on the plan, but I'm just going to kind of, if you look on the screen, give you a little bit of a preview of what the final document is going to look like. We still need to work on getting permission for some of the photos that we've used. But we're trying to do this document. We want to do a lot of, we want it to be a really pretty document. We want it to be very user-friendly, and we want it to be a document where somebody who doesn't have a strong background in broadband could still kind of look through it and pick out the highlights of the plan. So I'm just going to scroll through and just kind of show you what the final document is going to look like. We've been able to find some really gorgeous photos of the state that we'll be including, and then once we get final permission on all of the photography, then when we release the final plan, you'll have an idea of what it looks like. You have a general idea, lots of big photos, and we've specifically designed it, like I said, so you have a lot of highlighted points that you can just skim and get the gist of what we're saying in the plan, and then you can read for further details. So let's go into the details, and as I'm going, if you have questions about specific recommendations, we can go through those. Okay, so Okay, so the beginning is pretty standard. We have a welcome letter from the state of Utah, from the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and then we've included just a quick executive summary. So if you are wanting to brief anybody on the broadband plan, we've tried to just condense the message into one page. So let's start on, if you want to go to page 11. So wanted to talk about some of the program accomplishments, and we've gone back and forth between how much detail we want to include. We've kept it pretty brief, but as you're going through and looking at this page, if you have any specific recommendations on things that we should maybe include bullet points in the items that we've listed, or if you have additional things that you think would resonate, you know, as some of our key accomplishments. So obviously we've launched the interactive broadband map, and we're seeing more and more usage of the broadband map. We're seeing a lot more visitation of our website, and we think that it's becoming a really good tool for people to look at broadband in various areas of the state and answer questions if they're looking for their address or their county. We feel like we've gotten to a point with the broadband map that it's become a really great tool, and we think that that's a major accomplishment. Also, that we've had such great provider participation in the map. This group, I think, is one of our great accomplishments. I think that as far as statewide advisory councils go, I think we've done really well bringing the public and private sectors together, and we've been able to sit down and talk about issues that are important to the state. This last year, we completed our regional broadband planning effort, and I think that that was really successful in taking a lot of the knowledge that we learned through these advisory council meetings, and then educating groups throughout the state on broadband, particularly on the industry. They understand a lot more about how broadband is deployed, and we want to continue, you know, working with cities and counties and the AOGs in helping them know, you know, funding opportunities that are available, educating them on best practices. And so you'll see that there will still be communication, you know, with rural Utah in particular. And then last fall, we hosted the statewide Broadband Tech Summit. It was the first, we had done a summit the year previous that was more focused on providers, but this summit was a wider general audience. And we were able to have 250 or so people participate the first year, which was great. We worked really hard to get to the 250 number. That was kind of our goal. And so we're really glad that we reached that, and thought that it was a good event. And depending on, you know, what happens with the future of the project, that's something that we really would like to continue. This year, URTA is working with Idaho and Wyoming to host the Tri-State Conference, and we encourage, you know, attendance at that conference. I think they have a really great schedule planned for that. And then we also, another accomplishment is that we have done a lot of research on statewide adoption trends. We're just finalizing the demand survey report, and hopefully we'll have that ready for the next advisory council meeting. We'll have a full report on that. We were able to include some of that data in the regional broadband plans. They were able to do sections for each of the regions, and so those have already been released, but we're putting everything together, and that will come out probably next month. So if you want to look through this as you're going through and editing, and if there are things that you think are really key that should be on the list, we would love to hear from you. So let's go to page 15.
Said you could click on this to stream it, but
so
it didn't work for me.
in the broadband plan, we have basically 8 key initiatives, 8 key areas that we think are really important, and they've been based on things that we've seen that are successful. They've been based on things that we're planning on doing as the grant continues, and then there are also recommendations for the future for the state to consider as they decide, if they want to continue funding these activities in the future.
Yeah, I plan to.
So the first item that is in the broadband plan is convening partners to increase deployment. As I mentioned, we think that this group has been really successful, and we'd like to recommend that it continue. We think that it's been a really great place to learn best practices. It was really the first time that stakeholders came together and were able to even agree on where infrastructure was and wasn't. And that was a huge milestone, particularly in the first year of the project, getting everybody on board. And then, let's see, working with broadband providers and communities to learn best practices, that's been really important. I think that we've learned a lot of the best practices on a state level, and as we've been going out into the state, we've seen that there's definitely an education opportunity out in various parts of the state. Another thing that we believe that the Advisory Council has done is it's created a business-friendly environment. It's helped the state to understand the business of broadband and understand how we can support private industry, and I think that that's a really important part in the plan. And so, like I said, these are all designed so that if you just read the heading and you just read the highlighted points, you'll get a little bit of a feel for what the document says. And we hope that, as you're sharing this with people, it'll help them to engage with the document. So the next page, page 17, is Marketing Utah's Cutting Edge Infrastructure. One of the things that we really would like to continue doing, we've done this, but I think that we would like to do a greater push for marketing the infrastructure that Utah has. We know that we have really good infrastructure. Even, a lot of you in the room represent rural companies. Many of you are deploying very fast speeds in rural areas, and we want that story to be told, and we think that that's really important, especially in our office with economic development. And so attracting more businesses to Utah, we would like to be the state to launch the first commercial broadband map, and we've been working on a prototype of that, so as soon as that's ready. We're also going to be doing some individual visits with providers over the next month or two in cooperation with our data collection. We've spoken with quite a few of the providers, but we're going to do an increased effort of sitting down, looking at different providers' infrastructure and deciding how to display that. And we think that we've gotten pretty close to a good model that we can use. Another portion of this is working with local communities to market their existing infrastructure. We think that GoEd particularly could be very influential in helping communities, particularly rural communities, city councils, county governments understand what they have, so that as they're doing their economic planning, that they're taking broadband into account, that they're promoting the services that are in their communities. And we think that's a really important part of economic development, as well as this would be a great tool for our corporate recruitment and incentives office to be able to look at any area of the state as companies approach them and give them options of places that they can locate in Utah. The next initiative that we have is advocating for Utah on a national stage. So that's on page 19. Some of the roles of this office, we've become sort of the state advisor on broadband. We get a lot of questions from communities and from state entities. We'll get regular calls to ask about different issues happening in the state, and we think that we're a good neutral party to, if we get a call from the governor's office, we can tell them, okay, this is the issue, this is how the different stakeholders feel about that, and it helps them to make an educated decision. Another role is encouraging policymakers to enact policies that will improve our infrastructure, that will support what we're doing. We put a few examples in the plan. There are changes happening with USF, there are changes happening with E-rate. Some of those things are really on the forefront at the moment, but the more that we can understand what's going on and educate state leaders, and when there's opportunities for comment and we feel that it's appropriate for the state to comment, to be involved with that. Another item that we've put on the bulleted list is working with federal agencies, the BLM, the Forest Service, the Park Service, UDOT, state agencies. And I think that in the future it would be good maybe to have a working group with some of those federal land agencies to kind of have more coordination with the state and with our federal agencies to see, you know, how we can get through some of the barriers. I know it's really difficult to deploy across, you know, federal lands, so I think that's an important component. Another thing that we feel strongly about is that the state should have a role in verifying, you know, data. Right now, you know, we know that the data collection for residential data is going over, and it's going to be directly collected by the FCC, but we think that there's still value in having a state entity in place so that if there are questions about data that we, you know, have the local contacts and that we can help work through some of those issues. And also, you know, once the new broadband map is released with the new data collection, being able to compare what we've seen to what they've released and make sure that there aren't any major inaccuracies, providers falling off, and things like that, we think is important for the state to be involved with. So the next page, helping communities increase speeds. Since we're able to work with our GIS team particularly and understand the landscape here in Utah, identifying the underserved communities and working with them to figure out what the best practices are that they could employ, whether it's funding opportunities, whether it's right-of-way issues, and also I think giving attention to some of the underserved communities and helping this group look at different solutions. You know, we have such a wealth of knowledge in this room, and I think that enlisting your help and support in some of the harder to serve areas to come up with unique solutions is a really important factor going forward. And then also encouraging investment in underserved communities. And I think that one of the things that the broadband map has really helped with is identifying those communities. And when providers are looking, they're able to see, okay, you know, there's already a lot of providers here. Maybe resources need to go into an area that's truly in need of services. So then page 23. Identifying funding and partnership models. So we've tried to make sure that as funding opportunities arise, that we notify providers and other stakeholders that may qualify. We spend a lot of time just looking over the FCC, USDA websites, making sure that we catch things. The FCC right now is just every day on the website, there's new information about the programs that are going on. So trying to keep up with all of the different changes that are happening and making sure that people know about funding opportunities, that they know in a timely manner so that they have time to apply. And then also, you know, working with public and private entities to encourage public-private partnerships. And we put UDOT as kind of our crown example in the plan. I think that they've done such a great job with their fiber and conduit trading model. And we'd like to see, you know, cities look at that model and come up with unique solutions to help deploy infrastructure and save money. So. And then the next section on page 25, giving Utah schools the tools to succeed. You know, we think that we have a really great resource with it's UETN now, and they've really stepped up in the state and helped a lot of schools and libraries and other institutions apply for funding, and we've highlighted that in the plan. And moving forward with some of the changes that we anticipate, there is probably going to be a lot more opportunity for wireless infrastructure in the schools, and working with them, working with the Office of Education and with the STEM Action Center, who's really concerned with that issue in particular, will be important, and helping state leadership understand, you know, what funding opportunities are available, federally and, what the state would need to contribute in order to make that federal model work, that'll be an ongoing education piece. And I think that coordination between some of those groups are really important. And we've also highlighted that when the schools and libraries are connected, a lot of times that means that those services are also more likely to be available in the residential area because they've been able to go the long distance with the E-rate funding. And then the next page, page 27, we put healthcare sites and first responders together. We didn't have quite enough room. We thought about putting everything that UETN does together, but it was kind of hard to put everything together. And we thought it made sense to put healthcare sites with first responders. So working with UETN to identify some of the particularly nonprofit rural facilities that would qualify for funding will be a really important component moving forward, and working with them on that. And then also working with the FirstNet team to increase access in rural Utah. Right now, they're right now Steve Proctor is overseeing that while they find a replacement for Kevin Rose at FirstNet. But we'll be continuing to work with them, and they have their own group that's been meeting, and we've been participating in that. But letting the state know what's going on, giving feedback, and especially I think we have a lot of great mapping resources that FirstNet can utilize in seeing where different areas need to be covered with the future plan. And then the last page of recommendations is linking rural Utah to a global marketplace. And this piece would be a collaboration with our office, with our rural development office, with the BEAR program, with the small business development centers to work with particularly rural businesses. There are many rural businesses that don't have a basic website or any kind of online presence, and we really would like to get the numbers up of businesses that have websites in Utah. So we put that in here, and we've talked about several ideas of workshops or linking them with existing resources that will help them to get up and running. And we also would like to take some of those businesses, work with them, and do a study and see if that's impacting their revenues and see how effective it is so that we can make tweaks to it. So that's another recommendation that we've made. So that's the big overview. Are there any specific questions about parts of the plan, or are there any areas that you think that we've missed that we should consider?
Yes. As I read through this, I really don't see a place where you are providing outreach to the tribal nations, and I think that's a really critical piece, and it's a missing piece in this.
Yeah, we've mentioned if you go to the schools section, we've mentioned tribal centers in that section.
It also needs to have an emphasis somewhere with their businesses as well, and trying to develop their economy. And it's been a real challenge on the reservation. So it would be very important to put something in there.
Okay. And we can work with you on the language and where we would put that. We could do an additional page just on tribal information. We were trying to decide whether to call the tribes out specifically or whether to include them as an underserved community. But we can talk about that and what makes sense, because we did talk about it. We put it in the school section, and I think that especially connecting the tribal centers would be really important.
And first, then, a piece to their funding is that they have to work with the tribal communities.
Yes.
With this, and so there needs to be a mention in there of that as well.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments?
Is this a plan that's going to call for staffing or funding to make this happen?
Okay, so that's a great question. So right now our funding goes until the end of the year. We've had some internal talks about how to continue the program, and so we've put forward a few ideas of how that could happen. but we don't have an official answer. And the plan is kind of the first step in saying, okay, this is what we think needs to happen. This is the recommendation that we're making. And then we'll work with our GoEd leadership on, you know, the specifics of funding and things like that. State funding is obviously an option. If you have specific ideas about that, we would love to hear that. On the last page, we just kind of gave a very general breakdown of that it would have to go through, that there would have to be a funding mechanism in place to continue the activities. We were very general on the last page, but if you have specific feedback on what we should put in that conclusion as far as an action plan on securing funding, we'd be happy to hear about that.
I think it's going to get people excited. So they're going to be ready to go after they read the, it's only odd numbered pages they get to read, right? Do I
Yeah.
have that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so after they're done reading page 20.
There'll be pictures on the other side, so they're,
Okay,
so
okay.
yeah.
So by the time they're done reading page 29, I think they're going to be ready to act. So
Okay.
I think it would be to our advantage to give them something, even if it's vague, that they could then support or act upon.
Okay. And I think too, we would love to get letters of support on the plan saying, you know, we think that this is something that the state should continue. And that would be really helpful as we move forward. The more participation that we have from this group would be great. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on specific areas? Yeah.
For economic development of our state.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
to our state, thoughts of maybe doing something.
Yeah, doing a rollout with some marketing. Yeah. Once we have the plan finalized, then we'll work on a marketing strategy to reach out to stakeholders. We'll probably be releasing a news release and doing some media outreach on it. Oh, great. That would be great. And the chamber was very gracious and included us when we were promoting the Broadband Summit. They did a feature, and that was really helpful in getting additional stakeholders to participate in the summit. So we appreciate that. And you guys have a great studio.
I was thinking about putting a link or sending a link to this.
Okay.
So I'll do that.
Yeah, you can please forward that on. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
So was there going to be any attachments or additions that reflected the regional plans specifically? Or?
Yeah, we have talked about a few ways to do that. We'll probably be adding a page of resources, and it might be a list of kind of links to access those plans. We've gone back and forth between how thick do we want the document to be, because we want to be able to give it to somebody and have it not be overwhelming. And so we might utilize more links to additional information just so that people have access to it, but it's not overwhelming.
Well, first of all, I think this looks great, and I think it reflects a ton of work. You know, knowing how much work it takes, like, this is great. One question that I have, you know, from a provider's perspective is, I think it would be hard for, you know, my company, for example, to write a letter of support if there wasn't more detail in here about your ideas for funding or sustainability.
Okay.
So, I mean, I totally support the ideas brought forward in here.
Okay.
But it'd be hard to support it without knowing exactly
how we're planning on.
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Your approval, it means a lot because I know that you know this. So. Any other thoughts on just reading through it? Additions? And you know, one of the things too in the plan is that we were pretty careful not addressing specific technologies. We've made it as provider neutral as we can. We haven't specifically put a lot of detail, for example, about mobile wireless providers, but we have several of you in the room, and so if there are things that you think that are missing that pertain particularly to mobile wireless, let us know if there's something that makes sense. You know, we've talked a lot about working with providers, and we think that covers everyone, but if you think there's something, you know, specific that needs to be in there, please let us know.
And pictures to contribute to the even-numbered pages, could they send them to you?
Yes, yes. And we have had a few people contribute some pictures, so that's another thing.
But I think everyone, you know, you've got pictures, right? Contribute pictures.
We're not paying royalties, but you can send in your pictures, and we'd be happy to use them.
Yeah,
so.
can I just put a selfie on one of the pages?
You know, we need some tribal pictures. You know, some tribal pictures.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be great.
I mean, that would be perfect in here to help make that point. Even if they didn't read, I mean, they're going to read the text, but see the picture makes that additional emphasis.
Yeah, and it might make sense to do a page just on tribes, and we can work together on that, even though they're mentioned. But yeah, if we want to call it out specifically, I think that makes sense. Doug, were you kind of?
It seems like the document has two purposes. One, to describe what has happened and what is going to happen.
Yes.
And when I see what's going to happen, there's not many metrics that are quantifiable.
Okay.
It's all kind of, you know,
yeah.
very general. If you have any, that would be helpful.
Okay, and if you have suggestions of things that we should be measuring.
Well, specific targets that you can actually check off 2 years from now and say, yeah, we did that.
And if you have suggestions on what you think makes sense for targets, that's something that and one of the hard things about assessing the ROI of the program is that a lot of the things that we do are helping businesses, but they're not things that are on my ROI sheet. They're things that are on other people's, and that's why it's been a little bit difficult to establish metrics, because, you know, UETN is doing a great job with schools, but that's kind of on their balance sheet, even though that we're supporting them to do that. So.
Now there's a page, the page of whose balance sheets we're supporting through the program.
I know.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Okay, so from here, let's see. So we have about 10 minutes. So like I said, we will send out a Word version. We'll send out this version along with a Word version of the document. You can go through. Please track changes. It makes it so much easier for us to go in and do edits to the plan. And then we'll have, like I said, we'll give you a few weeks to do that. And then we'll put together more of a final version. And we're hoping to get it together by the end of August, but we'll see how that goes. So.
Will there also be a link? You said you send it to us in a different format. Will there be a link online?
We're not going to post it on the website quite yet because it's not it's semi-public. Yeah, we're not going to put a draft on the website, but we are going to distribute it to our advisory council list for those that weren't here today with a version that can be edited. But we wanted you to be able to see kind of the look of the document, because I think it kind of helps you see where we're going with it, and I think it makes it easier to edit it, just seeing how it's going to turn out. So.
Hats off to your graphic designer.
Amy and I.
Congratulations, graphic designers.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate that you thought that somebody worked on it. So we just kind of, the last week or so, we had kind of the Word version of it, but we'd given it to a few of our managers and their eyes glazed over, and we knew we needed to redesign it. And so we're trying to get it to a point where somebody will actually read the document. So
I know why you put in more pictures.
Pictures,
name.
bold.
I think you made a good suggestion. I'm glad you did.
So, And, to, having just kind of call outs of key accomplishments throughout the document so people can just get a feel for some of the great things that are happening. But please submit photos. We'd love to have members of the advisory council submit photos for the document. Great.
Having the governor be able to sign her through as well.
We'll work on that. Yeah, we will work on that. That would be really good. Yeah. Yes?
Specifically called out the idea of working better with working more closely or productively with the federal land stewards.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to rights of way,
Yep.
the White House executive order.
Yep.
Supposedly it's supposed to make it easier. We're getting that issue adequate attention.
Okay.
It's also, I think,
Yep.
The same issue is sort of discussed in the page that has talked about VDOT and it's not really found these things in the way. So I think that might be one thing to get actual feedback from people. Adequately, or is there more that can be done to coordinate and form sort of a Utah solution that expedites this?
Yeah. And we would love to hear feedback from the BLM and the Forest Service and the providers on what makes sense, and we can beef up that language if we think that we need to give more detail on how we would go about doing that. But we would really love to hear from our federal partners on what they think makes sense.
And looking at this table that shows the census blocks that don't have competition or household count, a lot of these, I mean, just knowing what the data looks like, a lot of these, actually trying to provide service via some sort of, well, probably wireless or fixed technology, probably going to be on.
Definitely.
One thing we've been doing recently, I've been doing recently in the Forest Service is like this FCC, I've announced this to everybody in Airport to be part of our next national lands call meeting about this is coming down the pike. And just get people kind of up and aware that this is good, it's coming our way. Try to prepare as best we can.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some of the stuff didn't come with funding options for us, but like Sean and my roles, we're always trying to support people on the ground to get these kinds of jobs, done, working, finding new and better ways of doing it. We worked close with UDOT recently, getting at least 2 systems up and running in the cotton planting.
Okay.
We're interested.
Okay, good.
Great idea.
Good.
Maybe a question on, I don't know, just an idea and then do it. As coming from a provider, the state and city laws are like installing and putting up new towers are so drastically different, in my opinion.
Yeah.
From one county to the other. Sometimes it's very easy to work with, sometimes are just, by the time you get the okay to do it, the network is up. Oh, yeah, I volunteer to be part of that, whatever I can do with that. I don't know if that's a concern from other providers, but certainly from our.
Lincoln?
Just again, I represent the League of Cities and Towns. There is a small working group that's gone together at the request of Senator Howard Stevens and working on consolidating the laws and practices of local governments as it relates to siting the towers and a whole host of other things. Full attachments, kind of top to bottom of how we can make broadband deployment more easy for the provider. So that's in process. If you have interest in participating on that, certainly let me know.
And we have included on page 21, we've included promoting best practices, and that's part of that effort, is to educate the cities and counties on ways to help the private sector deploy more effectively. I think that's one of the most important things in the plan. So. But you can look to, at the language and some of the suggestions that we've made and see if they make sense and see if there are additional best practices that you'd like us to specifically put in the document. We'd love to put more detail in.
Along the same lines, where you talk about conduit for developers on that same page 21, is look at best practices. Inside wire was deregulated in the 1980s, and today's environment where we're looking at fiber to the home, where you got developers that they don't want to pay the money to wire the inside so you can take advantage of, the increasing speeds. And so it might make a lot of sense to develop best practices and to encourage developers, because they ultimately have a responsibility. Providers are making a lot of investment in bringing fiber to the home and looking at the economics, but if all of a sudden you throw another $5,000 on the provider per home to wire it properly, or whatever the cost is, that can dramatically change the economics and discourage that type of an investment.
Yeah, definitely. And we've mentioned installing conduit to new developments as an item on the list. But if you want to take a look at that, if you feel like there's different wording that we could use. But one of the things that we've talked about possibly, I know like the league has the working group. We could possibly work to do sort of a best practices guide that we could help, hand out to cities and counties, things like that. So if you have a specific recommendation, that would be great. Okay, sounds good. Any other comments? Okay, well, we look forward to getting any comments. And if you've just read it and you say, yes, we think it's great, we just want to be listed as a contributor, shoot us off an email and we'll put you on the list, or you can send edits. Like I said, we'd love to hear letters of support, and we'll work on kind of fleshing out a little bit more of the recommendation at the back of how we would sustain the program. Okay. Yeah.
I would like to invite all of you to the Native American Indian Summit that will take place July 30 and 31st at Utah Valley University. And this is a great opportunity to interact and mingle with tribal leaders and communities. Go to indian.utah.gov to learn more about it, and registration is open. Great breakout sessions and conversations.
Great, thanks. And we can put it up on our website as well. We can do a blog post about it and send it out in the next newsletter. So then it'll have a little bit of time for people to register. Yes. Okay, well, we look forward to your comments. Thank you for coming. We're going to have Brian Carver just go over where he's at with the overview of the regional broadband plans.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Very quickly, we are creating a statewide summary of the regional broadband plans. It's kind of an executive summary of the executive summaries from those regions. I did bring copies. I didn't bring enough. I'm not even going to bother to hand them out, though. It'll take too much time. I'll just have Kelly or Amy email them out to everybody. You're welcome to peruse them at your leisure and make any comments back as you see appropriate. Certainly, there is a lot of overlap with the state plan that Kelly and Amy are putting together. And actually, somebody made the comment about including regional information in the statewide plan. Maybe this summary of regional activities would best be included in the state plan, possibly as an appendix or another couple of pages. I'm sure we can cook it down to just the really essential parts.
That'd be great.
And not take up too much additional space. I do love all the pictures. We're definitely trying to dress ours up as much as we can there too. And the main point of the document is to summarize the key issues that the majority of regions have identified in their local processes that have statewide implications. Many of these activities have been discussed, such as furthering economic development, getting businesses online, having them take advantage of the services that are available, reducing the amount of regulation, both statewide and local, and Lincoln and the league are doing a great job conversing about that. Certainly improving access to services such as education, healthcare, employment, and public safety, and then improving the public access through public access points such as schools and libraries. And then the public lands coordination issue was one that was discussed in detail in most of the regions. And so finding ways to address those issues, coordinating with the state and federal land management agencies, perhaps the governor's public lands policy coordinating office might be a good venue. I don't know if we can get them to stop talking about RS-2477 roads or not, but if we can, this would be a good opportunity. But some of the recommendations that the regions are making to address these priorities, they're not afraid to start assigning responsibility or recommending responsibility to someone higher up the command chain, and requesting resources is certainly something that they're looking at doing. And facilitating that public lands discussion is high on the priority list. Finding partners with service providers to promote the availability of existing broadband infrastructure to prospective businesses. As was mentioned, that kind of commercial broadband map that Kelly and Amy talked about, working with EDC Utah and their Sure Sites program or something similar to that to promote the availability of the infrastructure that we have. Discussing the opportunities and incentives to help expand infrastructure and connectivity in rural Utah. There are lots of different resources that we know we can bring to the table right now, and I think there are more that we can bring up that we can get involved in the future. Continuing efforts to develop state and nationwide emergency services and public safety networks. The FirstNet program is doing a great job addressing that, and the regions are recognizing it. And then, just a public relations campaign to raise awareness of the availability and accessibility of the existing programs and services. And, GoEd is in a great position to continue that in the future if we can find the resources for them. So those are just kind of, right now, those are the main key items that we're focusing on. We're going to, flesh out a little bit of additional detail in the language and continue working forward in the regions and on a state level to tackle the issues as they come up.
Great, thanks. Does anybody have any questions about the regional summary plan? Okay, what's the date for the next? It's on the agenda. I don't have the agenda.
It's in August.
Okay, so August 26th is our next meeting. So that'll give us some time, once we get comments back, it'll give us some time to work with the document, and hopefully we'll be in a place where we can give you a final version of it, but we'll see how it goes. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming, especially quite a few of you drove up from remote parts of the state. We really appreciate you coming in person to talk about the plan, and we look forward to hearing your comments. So, thanks.
I am going to talk to Zoe. I talked to Zoe.
How about
Yeah, Joey's
fly all you want, but yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I'm sure. It'll be a good time. I was with my son. Where'd you guys go?
we don't get much, we don't get much traction. Things like that. And just be honest.
Yeah, our group just went to Yellowstone. Too far for me to take a week and Yellowstone. It would have been glad.
Are you marketing?
Don't worry about it, I'm up there. And the geyser, yeah, definitely gotta keep an eye on them.
We always had to report.
Hi.
Shauna,
You have
Oh.
Yes.
I was interested in your regional broadband plans. Even as we speak this morning, Moab, the field office called. Wanted to know if they lay fiber optic line.
Are you gonna give me your backup?
And the issue that we have
He hasn't talked to me about that. He's hit me up about they have a hosted ACD solution for call center.
And so, we are going to send a letter. Saying that it's okay for fiber to Utah.
We don't have to worry about anything.
Transportation only uses cameras.
Right.
For the specific use that it was identified. So anyways,
We'll try and send people your way.
it just seems
One
to
of the
me
companies
like
that
do another great
hosts we have our ingest server on.
that line.
I wonder if they have
So
Talking
marginally
randomly
to be able to
about
accommodate any
something that
use, however,
Before she moved here, or right after she moved?
Yeah, it's a commercial use.
my ass
Integrated.
getting that across to you guys, yes, it's okay as long as it's not here. We have the same issues with.
So I try to keep it to
Oh, yeah.
Laying fiber optic line adjacent to railroad, treating their right of way, which is fine, as long as it's only used for use. And so anyway, because we're mandated by law to get fair market value, it's easy to force it. So we're doing the same thing. We're bouncing this up to Washington. I'm sending all this in for Washington office person. But anyway, it just seems to me that when they're doing county roads or UDOT is doing a road, that they lay fiber optic line at the same time, so we don't have additional disturbance. Then we need to know when to turn off.
Yeah, when does the commercial use start? Yeah.
And so, we're cutting that down. Personnel trying to save money, just like the state is. And so, who's going to be responsible? Because we can't tell if the use is there. Unless we talk to the end user and they're saying, and then we find out after the fact, oh yeah, we've been using it for 5 years. And then it's problematic. So anyway, but I was interested in your plan. They're gonna send that out, right?
Yeah, actually, I left copies on the corner of the table. For some reason, it didn't print out the title.
Oh, okay.
I printed it all last night and then grabbed it off the printer and ran home, and then I realized that it didn't have. I don't know if it was the wrong color or what. It just didn't come out. But this is. The last couple of pages really just boil down to bullet points. I haven't fleshed out a lot of the real details of how to go about the conversation. I haven't talked with Kathleen. In fact, I haven't really been having conversations with anybody about it personally. This is just something that, as the regional group have met, this has bubbled to the top as being a critical issue. We talked about it last fall, I think, in one of these meetings. We had a good conversation about it. And yeah, I think it is something that we're going to have to go through, Kathleen, and these are national policy issues. It's not just something that you as a local administrator can say, oh yeah, we'll just check it off the list. It's
and we can't check it off for this one.
Exactly.
We're mandated by law. So it's created a problem. It's problematic for us.
Our right-of-way fees, the BLM and the Forest Service are pretty hand in glove, But the
fact of the matter is, there is, that is what it is. Linear right-of-way fees are the same as, managed by law, fair market value. We're trying to streamline some of that process, but in the linear right-of-way case, it's pretty much set up across the nation with the BLM and the Forest Service. There can. The width and the length, sometimes, we can talk about the fees, or they are what they are. Right.
When they construct it makes sense to
Yeah,
do that.
and the other thing that's come up recently for me is the fact of the matter is we charge different fees for copper and we charge different fees for fiber. And it comes down, their separate uses in the eyes of the Forest Service and the BLM. Some providers don't like that aspect, even though, because in some cases we have copper and fiber in the same trench. And they say it's double billing. In our case, we don't see it. Because it is, the difference between fiber and copper is, as you well know, is, Star Trek. Yeah, the amount of data, and it's mostly that, we say we got it, that's why the fees are like. And the fees, though, are relative to private industry's fees for right-of-ways. Our fees are really, there's an expense, no doubt about it.
Anyway, I just, thank you for bringing this to me.
Yeah, well, it's definitely something that we're going to continue the conversation, and I used to work with John Harja, public lands, I don't know what they call themselves. We used to call them Flipco. Okay. That was kind of started out as a bad joke, but it stuck. So, anyway, I used to work with John, and so in my opinion, I think they're well suited in terms of a state liaison to work with. But yeah, that's a conversation that needs to be had at that statewide level, at the very least. It needs to be there, and so hopefully this group can start to apply some of the pressure.
It's coming around. It's being discussed. We're discussing our national hall tomorrow, basically, saying, hey, Forest Service, we're trying to get people in DC to engage a little bit more on this.
Well, and it really.
What? Well, we know that. But, that's what we do as regional coordinators, to say, hey, you guys, it's coming your way, it's coming our way. And, the fact of the matter is we need to deal with it sooner than later and deal with it effectively across, broad spectrums of states and localities.
And I'm still naive, and I still think there's got to be a way we can make it work, because it's really in everybody's best interest to only dig once.
Oh, yeah.
Minimize the environmental impact. Even if all you're doing is putting the conduit in and then making it available in the future for commercial users to pull their own line later, but having a process in place where they can come in and pull that line and go, turn it on and immediately start paying their fees. And, get all the ducks in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And there's more agencies than just the Forest Service.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And the process.
Reclamation, mitigation.
Right.
There's a whole cadre of landowners.
And it's right-of-way. It's the right-of-way business. Is what I do and what Shauna does. The process is pretty well set of what needs to happen. It is a bit complex at times, but it is fairly straightforward. You start ahead of time, dot the I's, cross the T's, and move down the continuum.
Yeah.
But I hate to hedge, but we have a very straightforward. People don't like it. We're hard to deal with. Don't get me wrong. We are. But the fact, the environmental laws, stuff like that, we have got to go through this process, and it just has to be done. It's not the same as but yeah.
Oh boy.
Right.
A big sage-grouse for the state.
Right.
I'll tell you what, if Washington gets what they want, there will be nothing that will be able to crush it. And they're pushing for home sites. Home sites they emit some kind of frequency that is endangered sage-grouse. There's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration. And we're trying to balance.
But also assured, you know, be assured that, like the USDA is putting this money forward for a reason. They know, and we've, this is going to happen. Be aware, folks, because it's coming our way. And I've been preaching this for 2 years now to the field, and guys, get over it, because there's going to be a lot of providers who are going to want to put fiber optics to cell towers and power to cell towers, because this is the way it works. And be prepared to act accordingly. Well, it is. Responsibly. Get ahead of the game.
Well, like I was telling you, down in Moab, the county wants to lay fiber optic. Well, then we got the RSD substation.
And do you think watching off this place is over, especially Attorney's idea with, well, you know, they're threatening to sue us, you know, and people back in D.C. why do we even go, you know, I'm just saying, this is a reality. Why are we, you know, when the state's threatening to sue us right now, it's not so much us, it's you guys, but still, we have some inertia issues back there, because there's certain people, we gotta resolve that first before we can start solar such.
At CCC, when they built those camps, they created some roads historically. They're waiting to see how much, basically waiting to see how
We're saying that, because I deal with
my
that
own
too.
opinion is, I think it should be, you pick one, we'll pick one, you pick one, we'll pick one, 50-50 split, settle the issue, save a lot of money. Anyway, I appreciate, input and trying to coordinate accordingly. We have difficulty, Forest Service, you don't have as much problem as we do with the fish bank to the Ashley to the Wasatch Cache, but for some reason, our field offices, the field office managers make their own decisions, and some offices do business one way, and some do business another way. And Bernal and St. George, you know, two totally different spectrums and priorities. So anyway, so getting them all on the same page, that's what I think this unit will do.
One thing that would help, for at least on my point, is if we could start protecting title across these roads, crossing large stretches of national forest and BLM land, because currently UDOT, the state highways UDOT management know that, but we have no instrument, so to speak, for that easement. You know, and we'll give them something, but it takes surveys, and then we can do things in those easement documents with UDOT. You know, we have to authorize if there's going to be the infrastructure could be in there. We'll have to authorize it if it's non-road purposes, but we'd like to get that stuff put in. Like this Dig Once thing is great. Get that stuff put in, get it documented, these easements, so hey, it's there, it's a good thing. Get these things up ahead of time. But that's one thing we'd like to do is there's large stretches of highway across the state, both on the Forest Service, most more on the BLM, that there's no real legal instrument for that road across federal highway. You know, across federal. It's there. We understand it. You know, they're doing a great job, but it's not legally, and it's sort of a real problem. It just needs to be helpful. We can design certain things in those easements ahead of time. You know, about getting infrastructure and getting stuff in. It would be advantage. Would help everybody. He's actually done that, but we don't know what speed things up.
There was a representative from UDOT.
Yeah, there was.
Well,
She is.
She is.
My name is coming there. Yeah, my mind's gonna blank. It's
You're a good guy, you be careful with my network.
I just lost it too.
Yeah,
That's why I'm retiring.
I'll remember as I'm in the elevator going.
Middle September. I am going to try to branch out, start an LLC, and see if I can help facilitate. Try to, but I got to work last time. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, going to work every day.
I won't be retiring for another 20
you got kids.
Actually, I have grandchildren.
There you go.
College.
But, yeah. But, you know, we're interested. It's just that people have got to be patient with it.
Oh, yeah,
The other
absolutely.
problem
Takes
is
us
that the
forever.
Forest Service and the BLM are an issue in a mile wide. Like it or not, funding for positions, and I doubt they'll fill my position for 3 years when I walk out the door. But it's the people on the ground, which we try to help get things done and speed the process forward, which we do. Get them,
That's
go
why
ahead and
I'm
speed
bumping
them
all
up.
this information up to Rob Wilson. You'll probably do likewise to Joey.
It'll go to Joey and Mel. And Joey, I talked to Joey.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure she gets all this information because, you know, her input will be crucial.
Yeah, Joy Clare is a communication manager for the Forest Service, and gives her does the communication, the Washington office. But like it's one person. She will go. Like I talked to Joey about some issue on one thing. This is being one. She's interested, and she's going to go talk to Joey at another meeting tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
But this will be an issue for our national call. 10 minutes to brief the other regional coordinators on broadband. The issue today is coming our way. And we need to start keeping our ducks in a row. Facilitating these,
Yeah, I'm working on those 2 power lines, trying to get them across the state.
Transwestern
Energy
Energy
Gateway
Gateway South. I'm working on them too.
Yeah, and it's been a nightmare trying to get them across the state. Let's see.
Well, do you want to go talk about that? Because you have time?
What, Transwest?
Transwest, mainly the Western's decision.
Western. They'll condemn all that.
Well, we know, they just bought.
That's all private property. They have condemnation authority.
I know. Whatever.
Yeah, renewable energy. I can do that.
Well, these are the things we deal with. The internal battles and the external battles.
I had my cousin worked in the private sector doing EISs for primarily utilities. He told me all about it.
Yeah,
It's the same thing over and over.
Over and over and over again.
And with the sage grouse at the same time, I mean, transmission lines are the biggest threat.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we just dealt with the Ruby pipeline going through our region from Opal up into Oregon. They chose to go through northern Utah because the southern Idaho route was more complicated with. Was it you guys? Oh, okay.
I was the guy dealing with that whole thing.
You know,
it was fine.
I think it worked out fine.
Yeah, it worked out fine. Because that whole, I was pushing them up in Wyoming. They were pushing. You guys won. And I was pushing them. Luckily, it didn't cross too much national forest. That was good. So Gredzig and I were talking daily.
And even with Ruby, you know, Mark Makowitz was the Washington office project manager on that. And anyway, the thing is that even with Ruby, as much work as they did on the EIS, and as thorough as they tried to be, there were still issues with the applicant committed measures. But even though they said they were applicant committed measures, nobody followed through.
Jim Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
I'll put it in the file. Not that I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna be.
Thank you.
I'm a short time on. That's beside the point.
Yeah. Well, leave it for the next.
I'm gonna. Well, that one. I'm gonna be. Hello.
How are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
I
Thank
didn't
you
know I
very
would
much.
see you still.
Well, thank you for participating.
Oh, you're on the
too.
2-month, 60-day countdown?
I'm on the.
I can't make it very often.
Well, it's not that I'm gonna have to continue to work.
Like
It's
I
I'm
said,
gonna stop
sage
working.
grouse is
It's
going on
time
as
for
we
me.
speak.
Yeah,
It's
well,
my time. 27 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be.
A lot of people at UDOT do that as well, so.
Try to get out another. I just want to. I have to get to 5 o'clock. Get a dog. Get home.
Oh, my gosh.
Get I usually get home at 7. This is Sean in Derbyshire.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you, because we've got a, I need to talk to you, Sean. Yeah. We've called, DC. Okay, we've been having talks this week, we had one of the filters show up.
Speaking of that, how's Little Cottonwood Canyon going?
Oh, I should send you the big picture. You gotta see this baby, hold on.
I gotta see this, because you're working with Ann and Charlie and those guys getting that up there. 'Cause I've been pushing those, yeah.
But you gotta see this, this machine. This used to go on one of those History Channel machines.
Going up, yeah.
Going up the canyon, let me.
Calls from people in Kansas, it's coming our way. There it is, yep. Yeah, Piney, well, actually, Piney called me.
They just sent that in, and so it's. What is it that they're doing? They're cutting off the fiber.
No, they're just putting fiber in the ground.
Putting fiber up to Alta from
Wasatch Boulevard.
We used RO funds to get Wasatch Boulevard done. Everyone. It wasn't UDOT, it was Utah. It was within our UDOT, and I had.
Well, you got the same problem, we got internal balance.
Well, I went against my boss and wrote a letter up to the director, and I gave you RO to do. If I hadn't done Wasatch, there's no way we would have got Little Big.
What's the point? You had to get it in there to make it work.
We had to get Wasatch in to be able to get Little Cottonwood, and Big Cottonwood works really nice. Okay, so is this how broadband?
Well, what they did in Joe was they put a DAS system up, and they put a DAS system up big, and that's what they're doing here. They're getting the cable, so they can put another DAS system up little. And then they'll have a tower at Alpha, a tower at Snowbird, and there's several towers going down. Little's where these are just nothing.
Curves, Big was just.
Big was there's one about it.
We had about 7 miles of no communication, so we're getting, public safety's having problems, and we'll be putting other towers for the radar system and CAN system maybe as well. And so we're going, yeah, we're just so excited to have our snowplow drivers, and it really helps the public safety.
Okay, so are you issuing a special
Those are basically, be a special,